Welcome back to Untamed Social. I am Rachel Strella, and I am here with Anna Dobbert.
Hi.
I'm excited. This is the first time that Anna and I get to collaborate. And this is actually a really fun topic for both of us. So today we're going to talk about being imperfect and being imperfect on purpose. So this is actually really great because we're talking about a new way of looking at your social media strategy, being imperfect on purpose. So I had a former business coach who used to say all the time, people are messy. And I think that's a great way to kind of sum up the truth about humanity, first of all. We are messy, all of us. But also, I think it's a great way to sum up the reality of social media. I think a lot of us have been living the lie. And we've lived behind this perfect persona on social media. But the truth is, we are messy. And while we don't have to showcase all of the messy details of our lives on social media, we were living behind this facade. So I thought we could each share a little bit of a personal story about a time we've tried to live the perfect life.
Yeah, when I think about that question, social media wasn't very there in my childhood, but it got popular in my early teens, and I started to engage with it later than the rest of my peers did. But then once I did get into the social media world, I was all in. I would post anything. And then one day when I was 19 and I started to get a little bit more of a frontal lobe, I kind of freaked out. I looked at my Instagram grid and I said, this has everything. This has every different side of myself. This has so many pictures of my face. And I really honed in on that element of it being so many pictures of my face. And I went through and I deleted every single one that had my face in it. I archived all of them. I was like, the internet never needs to see my face. This needs to be done. It messed with my head for a period of time. And I still kind of feel that way at a decent amount. I don't post a lot of my face. I don't post a lot in general. And I can tell that it definitely came from that sort of societal idea that Instagram is supposed to be perfect and your social media presence is supposed to tell this perfect story. And I was like, I can't even engage with it if that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
That's totally understandable. I think that's actually more of a thing for women too. We have this thing about how we look and we want to.
Yes.
I feel that way too. You're my editor sort of with graphic design. I'm like, can you cut out, that scar on my face? So we all feel that way at times. So for me, just this past Easter, my family was here and we took this big ussie before everybody left. And I have this hydroponic garden, this gigantic light vest in my living room, and I saw the lighting was absolutely horrible because it was way too bright and it was kind of blurry. My husband tried to go gadget his arm to take this photo, and I was like, I can't post that. That's way too bright and blurry. And my husband's like, no, it's such a great photo. You have to post it. So I was like, oh, okay. So I posted it, and of course it was fine, but. It's just funny how much we overanalyze something like that. But I think for me, and I think this kind of leads to a broader conversation, being in social media as a social media professional, I feel we're held to a different standard. It's my work is out there on display. What kind of a social media professional am I if I'm putting out a blurry, poorly lit, photo on social media, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, for you, in the line of work that you're in, your social media is effectively your portfolio. If people are looking at that and saying, okay, this is your scope of work, this is what you're capable of doing, when that's not necessarily entirely accurate. Just because you do it professionally and you can consult people and you've had success with other people's accounts doesn't mean that your account is going to be treated the exact same way.
Right. But it's but that's that thing where I'm being held to. It's the same thing on Facebook. I remember having a consulting meeting with a prospect one time, and they're like, we noticed you're not getting a whole lot of engagement on your Facebook fan page. So it's if my Facebook fan page is blowing up, that makes me, not credible at all.
Yeah.
It's just that standard.
Yeah, it's definitely I don't know how best to describe it, but it's a slippery slope of looking at your personal social media and then determining what kind of then business you must run. Yeah. It's not entirely accurate.
Yes, right. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but I feel like I'm always on display. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit more about, this pressure to be perfect. I mean, we talked a little bit, the other day about the highlight reel trap. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I feel like it's something I've been hearing more in the, TikTok conversation buzz about how you can fall into the highlight reel trap, which would be like looking at other people's, like your peers' social media and comparing that directly to your own life and not understanding that everything that they're posting isn't a direct reflection of their life, but rather their highlight reel, the parts they want to show, the parts that they've like pruned and primed and made to perfection. And you're taking that and filling in all the gaps of being like, oh, because your breakfast looks this way and your vacation looks this way, this is the person you are and this is the life you lead and it's always beautiful and it's always happy, which just isn't the case. Because then you turn and you look at your own life and you say, well, this wouldn't look very good in a picture, or this has so many other complex, humans are complex and humans are messy, like we were saying earlier. And so you can fall into this highlight reel trap of saying, if it's not looking a certain way, then it must be less valuable, less happy.
Okay. So we're kind of curating the perfect life. Yeah.
Yeah, or you can fall into the trap of believing that someone else's curation is their life.
Right.
As opposed to what it is, a display.
Okay. And that makes sense. I get that. We're always putting out a version of ourselves that we want people to see. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I follow somebody online, Mark Schaefer, who most people may know him. He's a social media consultant. He's very well known. He wrote something recently. It's called "Why Strategic Imperfection is Your Essential Strategy to Beating the Boss." Because of course, everybody knows AI is out there, could potentially take all of our jobs someday. But what I really liked about this strategic imperfection was he referenced certain things like the Pratfall Effect, which was actually discovered back in the 60s by a psychologist. And he said that people who are perceived as highly competent, they actually, despite their competence, they become more likable when they actually make a mistake and they admit that minor mistake. And I really, really like that. Like just this week, somebody on our team, they owned our fundamental this week. They were so vulnerable by admitting all of their mistakes this past week. And I really loved that. And it made me like them even more. Nobody likes a know-it-all, or somebody that's perfect all the time, pretends to be perfect. And it reminded me of a book that I read, a sales book. It was somebody that wrote this book in the 50s, but it was called How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. And he said that, when he was speaking, he was hitting the speaking circuit, he would get up there and he would be nervous. And when he got up there, he would get on stage and he would tell people, I'm kind of nervous right now. Instead of just faking it till we made it and hoping nobody noticed. And it actually made the audience want to be in his corner. They wanted to help him out a little bit. And it's just funny what happens when you admit something like that you're nervous. So yeah. I like this. I like this whole strategic imperfection thing. Instead of acting like we know it all, that faking it till we make concept is kind of out the window.
Well, yeah, and if we wanted to use like him doing that and coming out on stage and saying I'm nervous, it is a strategic move, and it's authentic in its representation, but maybe not in its spontaneity. It's not like he came out there and felt so compelled to say that. He used it strategically, and this is sort of what we're getting at here is you can figure out ways to do that with your own social media and turn it into strategy by finding these things that are authenticity signals, sort of being I can inject this into certain places and it shows people that I'm human, that I'm here, that I understand you because you're also human. I recently last time I did the podcast with Lainey, we had a slew of technical issues. We kept getting frozen. We kept not being able to hear each other. And Lainey and I are also pretty close. And so it led to a lot of like completely unprompted laughs and all these different things going on. And so by the end of it, when I edited the podcast, I was like, this would make a hilarious blooper reel. And I think even we had forgotten the word for blooper reel while we were recording the podcast, and that made it into it. And that was such good little insight to make. If we're making all of these podcasts and all of these clips of expertise and advice, but the audience doesn't actually start to see like, okay, but who am I as a person? And who are you as a person? Yes. Adding in things like that adds that authenticity signal to it.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you pointed that out, that authenticity signal, because it showcases who you are, you know, without having to like be, you know, I think the best word, like you're the person who like just puts everything out there in the kitchen sink, you know, yes. You don't have to be that guy, but like you can showcase that you're a real person and that vulnerability factor, and that makes you more likable and relatable. So, I mean, there's a cost to, you know, trying to be perfect all the time. And I can speak to a few of them. Like, first of all, it's consistency. You're going to lose consistency if you're always trying to be perfect. That analysis paralysis, I find it in myself. I struggle sometimes to come up with content because I'm like, oh, it's got to be as good as last time. Or, you know, if I had something that did really well, I keep wanting to outperform that one that did really well. And sometimes you're just not going to have content that, like, outdoes itself. It's just not going to happen. So, like, it's okay to be imperfect. I think the authenticity thing we just talked about is really important, because if you're just like, oh, I have to write my 4 posts for the week or whatever, then you're just going to be pushing stuff out that's not you, you know, or you're just going to have AI write it to say that you did it. You're going to lose the authenticity factor. So, and then of course the big remiss would be, you know, that human connection, which is really what we're here to do. So, like, you know how people always want to create formulas, like, oh, Motivation Monday, or, you know, whatever it is. And I tell people, like, don't feel forced to do that, because if you run out of a Motivation Monday, you know, you're going to lose the authenticity factor. You're going to run out of something to say. So, like, focus more on that human connection. That's more important than anything.
Well, yeah, and I feel like that relates to sort of the nature of social media and why authenticity is particularly important for this demographic. Because when you think about advertising as a whole, right? If you're thinking like a billboard ad, a newspaper ad, a commercial, you, first of all, typically have a team behind doing all that. And also, you can put all this effort into it, and then it's done and complete, and it can run for a period of time, and it's all the same ad. Social media never ends. It never stops. You consistently have to feed that beast. Yeah. And if you're trying to feed that beast, billboard quality, commercial quality, newspaper ad quality content all of the time, you're going to start to lose some nuts and bolts. Like, it is not going to be a sustainable way of functioning at all. And so not only can authenticity and imperfection be strategic for connecting with your audience, but it also can be strategic into creating a content plan that's functional for you, that you actually enjoy doing. Because no one's gonna do something that they hate, like, forever. If you're starting up social media, you're probably gonna keep doing it for a long time, and you're only gonna do that if you enjoy it and if it's not miserable for you.
You're totally right. I know when I was like in my heyday at TikTok, I was like having so much fun, but it was a lot of work. But I kept trying to trump the things that I was doing, and then I burn out, you know? Like, you really have to enjoy it, you know, be committed to it, and like you also have to be really authentic too. So there's so many elements here to be consistent and be true to yourself. The mental energy on social media is a lot. And imagine it's like the people who try to have like 10 different channels.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot to be said too for like sticking to one or two that like you really enjoy and that you're getting the most traction on, instead of trying to be everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It reminds me of, so my boyfriend, I don't know if I've talked to you about this before, but he was in a band, or he is in a band, and a few years ago, I want to say maybe like 4 years ago, their label had a lot of pressure on them to be posting on TikTok at a certain frequency. I think it was something like 3 a week, and it was all in their hands. They had to do it all independently. And they had one that went really, really viral. And it was sort of like a scripted sketch bit. And so from then on, every single time they kind of felt like they needed to make a scripted sketch bit. And I remember kept trying to tell them, I was like, it doesn't need to be an elaborate song and dance every single time. Like you can put anything you want up there and see what sticks. You don't need to be putting so much mental effort, because they all hated it. They all hated doing scripted, perfect, pixel perfect little sketches all the time. And I was like, then don't do that. Like, do something that you can sustainably do and you are having fun doing. One, it's going to read better to your audience because it's authentic and it's clear you're having fun.
Yes.
And two, it's going to be easier for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, people want to see other people have fun.
Yes.
They don't want to see miserable people making sketches.
But the pressure we put on ourselves, it's really unnecessary.
Yeah.
Well, let's like maybe just give a couple of things, practical advice to help us let go of this perfect. So, I think it's okay to be good enough, not perfect. Good enough. One of the things that I remember Lainey always saying, especially for people who are like, camera shy, I was one, who really struggled like with talking head videos, is like pretend you're talking to somebody on FaceTime, which was a really great tip. Along with that is like talking to somebody like you're talking to a friend. So if you're saying it in a conversation, it's a much better way of trying to get content out there than like trying to pretend like you're writing a novel. Another tip would be like showing that messy middle. So the progress shots, the unscripted stories, the behind the scenes. And I highly recommend that because people actually like really seeing like the work in progress.
Yeah.
And the storytelling part, like I can't emphasize this so much. Like forget the polished ending, tell the story because people are always going to remember, how you made them feel, and that good story is everything. So whatever that story is, work in progress, tell it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I had one piece of practical advice, I think the thing coming to my head is just to get out of your head. Like, I think people are holding on to and defining certain rules of social media that don't exist. There's no rules to social media. There never has been. It's a blank canvas, and you get to decide what box you want to put yourself in, or if you want to put yourself in no box whatsoever. You just need to get out of your head. You just have to let go of whatever notion you think social media should be, and you can make social media what works for you.
Absolutely. That is such a great tip. There are so many people who come out there with rules. Mm-hmm. Those are their rules, not your rules.
Yes.
I think my number one tip would be that it's okay to be vulnerable. So many people are afraid to tell how they're really feeling about something or something that they've been through. And I've always felt like that vulnerability is your voice and it's your chance to tell your story. And I have never had I've never had anything that's ever happened or a story that I've told where I was vulnerable that has made an impact that has negatively affected me in any way. If anything, it made me relatable. And I had people that would say to me, I'm so glad that you told me that, or I'm so glad that you shared that story because I dealt with that too. And I can relate to that. And that's the thing that can really translate to trust. And I can't emphasize it enough. If they're going through something, somebody else is too. And, again, this isn't like you have to share like your deepest, darkest secrets on earth. But like just being vulnerable about something, whatever that something is. Like I know this past year for me, I was suffering with depression. And being able to talk about that and other people share their stories is like, it was something that a lot of people go through. So the vulnerability is something that I think you should be okay with at your comfortability level. Like you said, get out of your head, your rules.
Because isn't that the whole point? Isn't that sort of the thesis of social media is like connecting with one another? And isn't the kind of the only way you can accomplish that through vulnerability?
Absolutely. Well, we have a challenge for everybody this week. we challenge you to post something imperfect. You know, a blurry photo, maybe a caption that you don't overthink. And you know what? Like for me, next week, my sign is going to be straight that I'm planning to hold. Get out of your head, do something different, you know? And in marketing, you know, we're all about results. So, hey, try it, see what happens. You know, it's worth a shot. We love to see, you know, how it works out for you. Well, thank you guys for tuning in to the Untamed Social podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.